A jury in California has ordered Soulja Boy to pay $4.25 million to a woman who said he abused her while she lived in his home as a blunt roller and personal assistant back in 2019 and 2020. The verdict was in Los Angeles County Superior Court, and it includes $250,000 in punitive damages.
Soulja Boy, you worried they're going to hit you with a big verdict?
Punitive damages are damages meant to punish the defendant, whereas compensatory damages, the $4 million, that's meant to compensate the woman for what happened. So my article at legalaffairsandtrials.com breaks down the verdict. The biggest 1.5 million chunk of that was for the sexual battery claim, followed by the assault claim, which was $760,000. That's $460,000 for future harm and $300,000 for past harm. The jury did find Soulja Boy not liable on the false imprisonment claim, so it wasn't a complete loss for him. I spoke with Soulja Boy outside the courthouse after the verdict, and he said the jury got it wrong. He said he's vowing to appeal, and he thinks it's unfair that the woman was allowed to remain anonymous when she sued him. She sued him under a Jane Doe name, but she was called by her real name in court, but in public, she's known as Jane Doe.
Soulja Boy, do you have $4 million to pay her? What do you think about the verdict?
Today, I stand before you deeply disappointed in the verdict delivered in my case. I firmly believe that the decision made in court was not based on facts or substantial evidence, but rather on factors that were outside of my control. The truth was overshadowed by the involvement of individuals such as the jury who were not present during the events in question. And I feel that the system allowed external influences to shape the outcome. Furthermore, the use of Jane Doe as the identity of the accusers raises serious concerns about fairness. Keeping these individuals anonymous while I'm forced to face public scrutiny creates an unequal playing field. I believe this entire process has been tainted by a system that is not designed to protect the rights of the accused. I want to make it clear that I'm innocent. This case was never about justice. It was about money and personal gain, and I will not let that stand. I am committed to filing an appeal and fighting for the truth to be revealed. I will continue to stand by my decision and believe that I did not commit the crimes I'm accused of. Thank you to everyone who has supported me during this time. I promise that I will fight until the end to clear my name and expose the truth.
I also spoke after the verdict with the lawyer who owns the law firm that represents the woman, and he said this is a great win for them, and they're going to be pursuing this judgment against Soulja Boy for years to come. If he doesn't pay it up front, which it sounds like he doesn't have the ability to do, they can pursue him for 10 years and then renew the judgment for another 10 years and keep pursuing him.
Executed as well.
And this might just be the start of a long process in collecting money from him, right? Because I've seen a lot of questions about, well, he doesn't have $4 million. What are you going to do for that? And you talked yesterday about the process, the 10 years that you have to collect on this judgment, and then you can renew that for another 10 years. Are there different things you can do to try to get some money for the plaintiff?
That's the plan, whether it's to, go after his music royalties or garnish any wages that he may have, whatever's getting paid on tour. If he has any real property, we can attach that and sell that. So there's certain things that we can do to enforce the judgment, and we have plenty of time to do so. Now, of course, there may be some post-verdict settlement where he pays a significant sum of money and this gets resolved and it goes away. That's always a possibility. But, other plaintiffs' lawyers have contacted me in the past 24 hours. Like, wow, this is great, but there's no insurance money here. Why did you take this case? I'm like, well, we took it because it was a righteous case. It's not all about the money, even if at the end of the day, we don't get a dollar out of this. And I expect that we will, and we'll make sure that we go to the ends of the earth to get our client paid. But even if we don't, that's why you go to law school and you become a lawyer. It's not just about dollars and cents.
I was in court for a lot of testimony, including testimony from Soulja Boy's manager, Miami Mike. Miami stands for Money Isn't a Major Issue. He's actually from Mississippi, and he discovered Soulja Boy years ago, before the Crank That song came out, and he's been with Soulja ever since, and he was a defense witness in the case. You can see him walking into court with Soulja Boy there. Mike testified as a defense witness in this case because the woman who sued Soulja Boy testified that she had actually sent him text messages of her bruises. Because the woman testified that she'd actually sent photos of her bruises to Mike after she spoke with him on the phone and told him that Soulja had been assaulting her and she wanted to stop. So the woman testified that she sent the photos to Miami Mike because she wanted him to see the photos because Soulja kept hitting me and he wouldn't stop. She said, I felt like if I had Miami Mike talk to him, he would stop beating me every day. So Soulja's lawyers called Mike to try to counter those photos. And Michael Sykes is Miami Mike's true name. He denied ever hearing that Soulja Boy, whose real name is DeAndre Cortez Way, had ever assaulted the woman. Mike testified, she was talking to me, but she never did break it down. She never did tell me that Soulja hit her. He continued, I got 5 sisters. If she had told me that, I would have definitely got on him. You know what I'm saying? And that's my photo of Mike that I took when he was outside the courthouse. The courthouse is in Santa Monica, when he was going in and out of court to testify. I talked to a couple jurors after the verdict, and they credited the woman's testimony and the photos with corroborating her testimony. An older man who served on the jury told reporters that jurors agreed that, come on, he beat the living daylights out of her, no question. But the debate was about the woman's role as a victim or as somebody actually kind of participating in an entourage life. And the juror told me, this guy treated her like dirt, and he deserves the verdict. But that's what kept the lid on. Because the woman's lawyers actually requested $73.5 million. That includes $4.4 million for past emotional harm, $31.6 million for future harm, and $37.5 million for the battery. The lawyer even said, if you don't believe my client, don't give her $1. After all this, do not give her $1. But if you do believe her, give her everything. Soulja's lawyers, on the other hand, you can see them right there, said he shouldn't have been found liable for anything. They said there were no damages available because Soulja was not liable for any of her claims, and they were urging a huge defense verdict on all counts. Obviously, they didn't get that, so their goal in the punitive phase was to try to limit the damages. The trial actually had 2 parts. First, they found liability and compensatory damages, and then they moved on to punitive damages, the damages that were designed to punish Soulja Boy for what happened. And before that happened, there was a mini trial where Soulja Boy actually testified and answered questions about his finances. So the woman's lawyers really pressed Soulja Boy about Crank That, how much money he's made off of it, how much are his royalties whenever that song gets played at a baseball game, at a sports stadium. He said he didn't know. We really didn't get a lot of information about Crank That and what the royalties are on that. We did get a few details about his finances. He said that he made probably $50,000 performing at the crypto ball for President Trump's inauguration. So the woman's lawyers asked him about some of his statements in public about money that he's made. He once made $17,000 off a TikTok live, but he said he typically only earns $300 to $400. He once said he'd been offered $140 million for a video game system he designed, but he said that didn't go through, and that Nintendo actually sent a cease and desist letter. So I had to stop that first venture. And he actually laughed when the lawyer asked if he's worth $100 million. And he said, look, I don't want to get you all confused here in this courtroom. He says he currently rents a home for $25,000, owns 5 cars, and his lawyer in his examination really focused on Soulja Boy's other obligations. To ask him about his kids, Soulja Boy testified he has 2 kids that he supports and that he's lost money and shows because of this case, because he called them these accusations, these allegations, including Coachella. He said that he was invited to play at Coachella, but then disinvited because of these allegations. So the woman's lawyers asked for $4 million in punitive damages, which would be double the verdict. They got $4 million in compensatory, so they wanted $4 million in punitive. The Soulja Boy's lawyers asked for nothing, said that he'd already been basically punished through the $4 million verdict and he didn't need more. So the jury ended up awarding $250,000, which I think would be a disappointment for the plaintiff's lawyers. But as Nima said here, it's still a win overall.
It's certainly a win when you have a defendant who's calling your client a lying, disgruntled ex. So, the offer before trial was $100,000. So when you get a $4.25+ million verdict on an offer like that, that's fantastic. When you have your client vindicated and the jury says that she was sexually abused and she was physically assaulted and she didn't make all this up, that's certainly a win. Obviously, you can kind of look at the previous case that Kayla Myers brought, and that was the judgment in that case was approximately 10% of what we got. So, if you look at all those different factors, this was definitely a win for Jane Doe. Obviously, we want more. We always want more. But, we'll certainly take this and a win. And we're going to move forward with the second Jane Doe lawsuit, which was actually consolidated with this case at the 11th hour. They filed a motion to severance. Judge Epstein granted it, but we were supposed to have two Jane Does in one lawsuit. But we'll get to have another trial, which I'm sure Meghann's going to cover as well.
Yeah, I'll look forward to that. So you said their offer before trial was $100,000. Did you have an offer on your side? Was there a number that you were looking for them to offer to settle?
Well, we did. We made an offer to compromise in 998 in the $2 million range, and we between $2 and $3 million, we beat that as well. So, because there was an offer to compromise that we beat by almost 2x, they're gonna have to pay for our costs. And then, of course, under California law, whenever there's a FEHA claim, sexual harassment, there's wage claims, we also get our attorney fees as well. So when you add all that up, the cost, the interest, prejudgment, the attorney fees, looking at potentially, $1, $2, $3 million on top of that judgment as well.
So again, you can find all the details in the articles on my website, legalaffairsandtrials.com. And thank you guys so much for watching my videos, subscribing to my YouTube channel, subscribing to my Substack, and just supporting my efforts to keep covering these cases like that. I think it's great, and I appreciate you all so much. Thank you.